the way that actors very, very commonly are. And it had been about a month and a half. I'd made my peace with it, accepted it wasn't going to happen, and then got a phone
Decided
call.
you hated it and you never wanted it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Didn't want it anyway. And then got a phone call at like 4 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon saying, do you think you could get on a train to Manchester tomorrow morning to come on tour for 16 months? We need another swing. And that's exactly what I did.
What's another swing? What's a swing?
So a swing is somebody who understudies multiple roles within a show.
Oh my goodness.
From ensemble members to cameo roles to little featured parts. So I covered 9 people in total in the show.
You had 24 hours notice?
I had 24 hours notice. I handed in my notice at like the 3 different jobs that I was working at the time, which, you know, again, it's all part of the game. Headed to Manchester and learnt the show during the tech rehearsals because the cast had been together for about 5 weeks at that time altogether, getting prepared for opening night. And then I went on for my first track, which is another sort of theatrical term for the different parts in the show, at the end of that week.
Wow. And how often then were you called up?
So obviously we do 8 shows a week in the schedule. As an offstage swing, I wasn't scheduled to be on all the time. Again, I would have 24 hours notice if I was lucky. Sometimes it's at the beginner's call. Sometimes it's halfway through the show. So I never knew, basically. Every week was different.
And did you ever, because you were understudying several different parts,
yes.
Did you ever get in a muddle?
I'd like to say no. I'm sure there were definitely some performances that weren't completely perfect.
I'm sure the audience didn't notice.
Exactly. Well, that's a big part of being a swing or an understudy, really, is accepting that sometimes things don't go the way that it's planned, and that's the beauty and the most terrifying thing about live theatre, really.
OK, we've also got Gracie McGonigal on the line as well. Hi, Gracie.
Hello.
So you're currently understudying The Crucible at the National Theatre right now?
Yes, I am. I am currently in rehearsals in a tiny side room. But yes, I am covering right now, and I did last year as well.
And so how often do you get the call? Tell me about when you've had a last-minute call-up.
So I actually had 5 last-minute calls in the final week of the show last time. And I was already in another show at the time, rehearsing, so I was doing a full day, and I got the call at 6 p.m. saying, time to go on.
Wow.
And I was absolutely terrified because I was so tired from the other show, but you just think, right, time to put the socks on and just go and do it.
And something happened when you forgot where you should be standing.
Yeah, so although I do lots of musical theatre, The Crucible is a play, and the blocking and the staging is a bit looser. So it's a bit like just sort of start at the top of the act and make your way around the stage. And I was standing just a little bit too close to the front of the stage at the end of Act 1, and the curtain fell down, and it's made of rain. It's a rain curtain, and got
of course it is.
the
It's
whole
the
front
national.
of my dress. It's the national.
Oh, what? You got soaked?
And I got the whole front of my dress soaked. And I just heard this big gasp from the audience, but I think they thought it was supposed to happen. And that is also the beauty of live theatre.
Well, exactly. I suppose that's the fun of it. Hey, Gracie, is there a moment when they do the announcement over the sound system in the theatre to say, Gracie McGonigal will play the part today, and there's like, oh, does that happen?
Yeah. So I fortunately was understudying Abigail, which is like one of the most legendary parts, I guess, one can play. But it was at the time being played by the amazing Erin Doherty. And loads of people were definitely just there to see her. So I'm sure people weren't best pleased that I was on.
Oh, dear.
But hopefully by the end of it, I convinced them otherwise. Hopefully. You've got to give these people a chance.
Exactly. And lots of people who've understudied have gone on to great things afterwards. So it's all character building.
This was my first play.
Wow, I mean, that's stress. At the National as well. Bloody hell.
Yeah.
We are now live on the YouTube channel, by the way. If you want to post and say hello, let me know you are. We're on the YouTube. Go to youtube.com.
Oh,
search Time 20 so you can say hello. Any advice for Oliver Dowden as he goes up to Stacey? Stacey, what should you do?
I think the biggest thing is trying to harness your adrenaline.
Yeah.
When that kicks in and panic sets in, you're never as sort of productive or as clear-minded as you can be. So it's finding whatever you can do to calm those nerves and just, harness it in a good way, in a nervous excitement as opposed to panic. That's the biggest thing. Don't let the panic get to you.
What's your advice, Gracie? Don't get water all down your front.
Yeah, try not to fall into water. No, just read your notes and just trust that you know what you're doing. You've got the job for a reason. Just trust yourself.
Very good. Some top advice. Gracie McGonigal, Stacey Monaghan, really good to see you. And best of luck with it all.
Thank you so
In the
much.
nicest possible way. I hope you get called up soon.
Yes, that'd be
'cause that's the
great.
whole point. Yeah, lovely. Lara Spirit's still here. Lara, just explain, we're talking about you, Oliver Dowden. There's a reason why he's got this job. Explain the reason why he has got this job. His close alliance with Rishi Sunak.
Well, as was in a Redbox exclusive quite some time ago.
Who was editing Redbox then?
You were, I
was correct.
believe.
Thank you very much.
He penned a piece alongside Rishi Sunak and Robert Jenrick, another of Rishi Sunak's close allies now in the cabinet with him as well, in which they backed Boris Johnson for the leadership. Of course, Oliver Dowden then resigned as party chairman in June after those disastrous by-election defeats for the party, and actually was one of the kind of first catalysts for the fall of Boris Johnson by some accounts. So that's kind of a little brief bit of context of why Oliver Dowden will be standing there at the dispatch box today.
What do you think they might go on? What plans are Rayner go on, or is it going to be knockabout stuff?
Well, I think there'll be knockabout stuff, but it was interesting. Keir Starmer's intervention on the front page of the Times this morning on house building. Of course, he went on that a fortnight ago, so that might come up. We'll see.
And you're off to watch the best of the rest.
I'll be back.
And you'll be bringing those a bit later on. Tim Shipman's here. Looking quite summery. You can tell summer's arrived. He's got a linen jacket on.
I've brought out the beige.
Lovely.
Yes, which is not a statement on this PMQs, which is going to be a proper humdinger.
There's going to be a proper humdinger. Oliver Dowden, we've been talking about how the role he's had in prepping so many people. Do you think he'll be able to channel all of that experience?
There'll be some good lines, I suspect. Whether he delivers them with the panache of Angela Rayner remains to be seen.
Right, get on the YouTube channel. Get Times Radio in your ears. Deputy PMQs Unpacked is next, too, on Times Radio.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
It's 12 o'clock. I'm Matt Chorley. This is Times Radio. Deputy PMQs Unpacked is next. First, a look at the headlines this lunchtime. The Metropolitan Police has denied being under political pressure when it came to policing the coronation. The way officers dealt with protesters on the day has been criticised as being heavy-handed, with Scotland Yard saying it regretted some of the arrests made. One of the world's largest car makers wants ministers to look at renegotiating the Brexit deal. Stellantis, which makes Vauxhalls and Peugeots, has warned it could close its British factories, putting 2,000 manufacturing jobs at risk. The company says it's struggling to stick to rules on where parts are sourced. The business secretary is meeting with them today. And a leading homelessness charity has told Times Radio an end to so-called no-fault evictions is very big news for renters in England. The government's tabling its renters reform bill today to allow tenants to challenge poor landlords without losing their home. But the group representing landlords are worried it could exacerbate the rental housing supply crisis. And in the weather, a dry afternoon ahead for most. A chance of rain in central and southern England and northern Scotland later on. I don't very often get to do the weather. That's fun, isn't it? Right, we'll have a full news and sport roundup at past. But now, live on Times Radio and on the Times Radio YouTube channel, it's time for Deputy
PMQs Unpacked on Times Radio. Unpacking the politics and cutting through the crossfire.
Order, order. I call Matt Chorley and Tim Shipman.
And Tim Shipman, chief political commentator of the Sunday Times, is here.
Hello, Matthew.
We wondered about getting your deputy, but you don't have one, so you're here.
I am here, yes. No, and this is very important. This is, the future.
A big moment. Deputy PMQs. We've not had... Dominic Raab did do one towards the end of his tenure, didn't he?
He did.
Jokes about throwing tomatoes and so on. He's now long gone. Oliver Dowden is the Deputy Prime Minister. Just explain to listeners and viewers on the YouTube channel just how central Oliver Dowden has been to preparing other people for PMQs.
Well, I think he's prepared every single Tory leader since Ian Duncan Smith. Certainly, the last 4 Prime Ministers have had Dowden's advice. And he's one of those people who, on the face of it, looks rather dull and is kind of a backroom boy. And when he got the job, I sort of texted him his congratulations. He said, I'm going from, the wings to the front of house. And... it's a big move for him. He's a guy who is happiest operating in the shadows. He was a political operator in Downing Street for David Cameron long before he became an MP. But he's one of those people who's quite quick-witted, and he's kind of he's quite a nice bloke. And and there's a lot of people who like him. So the good people at this will have been probably helping him. Michael Gove, who's been doing it for a long time as well, I'm sure was in the room helping him. I suspect his old pal George Osborne's probably slung him a couple of jokes, and we'll see how he gets on. He's one of those people he's got a bit more about him than he appears at first sight.
It was interesting. We spoke to Gabby Burton earlier, who was David Cameron's press secretary, and she said basically she liked having Olive in the room.
They all call him Olive.
Because Michael Gove used to come in with hilarious, if totally unusable, jokes.
Yes.
And Olive was an ally in saying to David Cameron, you can't use that.
You can't use it.
It's very funny, but you're not doing that filthy limerick or whatever it was that he'd...
the Michael Gove premiership is one of the great lost premierships in British politics. We'd probably have invaded Iran and we'd have had limericks at PMQs. How long it would all have lasted is a whole different matter. But and Dowden's not really, he's a very devoted chum of Sunak. He's not someone who wants his job. So if he does well today, Rishi Sunak will be cheering him on rather than looking over his shoulder and thinking, is he doing it better than I am? And there's still a little bit of an element to that on the Labour side, isn't there? That, some people would prefer Angela Rayner to be socking it to the Tories every week rather than Keir Starmer. I think relations there are better than they've been for quite some time, but there's still just that slight hint that if she does too well...
So Oliver Dowden's got Jeremy Hunt on one side, the Chancellor, and Alistair Jack on the other side.
Good Lord, it's like, as the old line about Healy and Howe, being savaged by a dead sheep. He seems to have turned up with a couple of dead sheep as well. So
he's got a very, very sensible dark suit on, white shirt, blue tie. Angela Rayner is wearing a very striking white suit.
Yeah.
Sort of Saturday Night Fever-esque.
Well, who knows what will happen? And, will Dowden adopt, the Raab wink or some gesture like that? And let's be honest, there's some people have been getting excited that this is two gingers having a hop at each other.
Angela Rayner congratulated him on showing that gingers could reach to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. If you are watching along on the YouTube channel, let us know where you are. Stephen says, hi from sunny Taunton. Pip is in East Cowles on the Isle of Wight. Richard is in sunny Fleet. Alison's in the Trenton Mersey Canal, or in it, we don't know. John is in southeast London. Somebody says, I think Dowden's going to lose this very badly. Always good to hear from Keir Starmer on the YouTube channel. Jonathan says, morning from Uxfield. Oh, Chicago. I was going to say we haven't got many international listeners. Candy is in Chicago. Chris is in Bangkok. Yes, loads of you. Milton Keynes. That's glamorous. Harrogates. As well. Let us know where you are. Post it in the comments on the side. Right, here we go then. For the very first time, we go live to the House of Commons. This is Angela Rayner versus Oliver Dowden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a pleasure to welcome yet another Deputy Prime Minister to the dispatch box. The third deputy that I've faced in 3 years. And you know what they say? The third time's a charm. And I'm also pleased to note, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister has a working class friend, finally. I seem to remember that after the loss of 300 Conservative seats at last year's local elections, the Right Honourable gentleman resigned, saying someone must take responsibility. After 1,000 more Conservative councillors had been given the boot by voters, who does he think is responsible now?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of the Right Honourable Lady's opening remarks, can I just say it really is a pleasure to see the Right Honourable Lady here today. I was, though, expecting to face the Labour leader's choice for the next Deputy Prime Minister if they win the election, so I'm surprised that the Lib Dem leader isn't taking questions today. Speaker, you will forgive me, Mr. Speaker, you will forgive me if I take the Right Honourable Lady's predictions with a pinch of salt. After all, she confidently predicted that the Right Honourable Member for Islington North would one day be Prime Minister. Remember, this is a man
Jeremy Corbyn,
who wanted to abolish the army, scrap Trident, withdraw from NATO and abandon Ukraine. And what did she say to that? She couldn't wait for him to be Prime Minister.
Well, That's not bad.
That's a pretty good start.
That's a pretty good start.
Answering the question, it will be knockabout.
Yes, as Mimir was saying to me this morning when I was talking about Oliver Dowden taking deputy PMQs for the first time, she said, "All the jokes. Do we need jokes? This is serious. People ought to be doing." And I think you and I are probably of the camp that actually a bit of knockabout.
But it's not just jokes for joke's sake.
Yeah.
It's jokes that make a point. And Rayner had a goodish question, though I think Dowden resigned over 2 by-elections rather than the loss of 300 councillors, if I remember rightly. But, his response was obviously pre-prepared.
So this was he resigned after the loss of I think there were the local elections and then the 2 by-elections.
There were 2 by-elections.
And he resigned as party chairman.
Yeah.
But it also was an excuse to basically get out from underneath the Boris Johnson.
Yeah, he's basically
mess.
sick of working with Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
Some of Boris's people think that he was beginning the Rishi Sunak leadership campaign at that point. But, to make a joke about the Lib Dem leader, that flashes back to everything we were talking about last week about, does Labour go into coalition with the Lib Dems? It's a good joke and it's a good political point. Job done.
Yep. On the comments, people are saying, great question. Good reply from Dowden. Oh, she's good. Go on the gingers. Great chemistry. It's good. It's good knockabout stuff. Slightly tedious reference back to Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
I suppose.
Though he did it with a little bit more gusto than Rishi Sunak tends to do it, I thought.
Yeah.
It's still slightly embarrassing that they're still going on that. But, the reason they're still doing that, and it's easy to sit here and dismiss it and say these are all Boris Johnson's hackneyed old lines, there is still some cut-through in, the vestiges of the polling and the focus grouping that, people who are not big fans of Starmer do, some of them are not big fans because he was propping up Corbyn. And there was an astonishing word cloud, if you search it out online, that James Johnson had on Keir Starmer the other day. And when it was pretty devastating. It was sort of boring, incompetent, useless in big letters. And then
don't say that. We get the same thing every time we do a focus group, and people say, "Oh, Tories." But that is the human reaction to Keir Starmer.
The view of people is not, this is a bloke we're desperate to become our Prime Minister. Now, he looks in pole position to become it, but, not everybody's going to do it with the same song in their heart that they have with some leaders in the past.
Right, here we go then. Let us know what you think. Don't forget you can post on the YouTube channel, where you can watch along to see Tim's fetching linen jacket. Summer is officially here.
Fortunately, it's a blend. It's not going to completely disintegrate
blend.
In the heat of the studio.
Linen will blend. Very nice. Let's go back to the House of Commons. Question 2 from Angela Rayner.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's absolutely amazing that while the Labour Party is preparing to govern with a Labour majority, his party is starting to prepare for opposition, Mr. Speaker. And this week, at the National Conservative Conference, a member for Devisers blamed the country's problems on a new religion. He even hit out at the dystopian fantasy of John Lennon. The member for Pentonstone and Stockbridge said identifying falling birthing rates is the overarching threat to the UK. She criticised woke teaching for destroying children's souls and causing self-harm and suicide among people. And the Right Honourable Member for North East Somerset really let the cat out the bag when he said parties that try to gerrymander end up finding their clever schemes come back to bite them, as dare I said we found when insisting on voter ID. The Right Honourable gentleman opposite, while working in Number 10, said he had to listen to the radio every morning to find out what was really going on in the country. Apparently, he was surprised on a daily basis by what he learned. And most of his time was spent on day-to-day crisis management. 11 years on, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, it's a bit long.
Nothing has changed.
Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm not quite sure what the question was then, Mr. Speaker.
That was a bit of a gift.
But if she wants to talk about this sort of thing, we all know what's going on with her and her leader. It's all lovey-dovey on the surface. They turn it on for the cameras, but as soon as they're off, it's a different story. They're at each other's throats. Mr. Speaker, they're the Phil and Holly of British politics.
Well, you could see that coming a mile off. I was quite surprised you decided to go there, given that, still slightly up for debate what's going on this morning. But it's a good gag.
It's a good gag. And Rayner was too long. I mean, the great problem Angela Rayner's got this week is that this Tory conference that's going on is really...
it's the gift that keeps on giving.
It's sort of the Addams Family and the Munsters taking to the stage. And... incoherently raging about the state of the world as if they've not been in power for 13 years at this point. But it
would have sort of been better if she'd have.
Well, she could have got four questions out of it.
Do you agree?
Do you agree?
Do you agree that the biggest problem facing Britain today is babies?
Yes.
Do you agree that your voter ID plans were gerrymandering? Do you
and it's not
agree
even, I mean, Rees-Mogg, bless him, having a go at his own party's plans there. Plans he pushed through as the leader of the Commons. Yeah. And that's not even the correct use of gerrymandering anyway, as a phrase. Apart from that, brilliant. Well done. A-star for you.
Yeah. But, it was quite... It did go on far too long from Angela Rayner, and then he just ignored everything she said and just did his pre-planned...
Which I rather suspect there's probably 4 more good gags on their way, and he'll walk off as a sort of Tory hero if it carries on like this.
You can see him mocked up in the Sun tomorrow. Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner is Phil and Holly.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, and again, it's a joke. It's the reason it works politically. It's a joke which puts the spotlight on a real issue.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if it makes the news, it cuts through with readers and listeners and viewers who whisper it quietly, may not be listening to Times Radio, but may read red top newspapers and watch daytime television.
Let us know that you are listening. Make sure there is someone there. You can text me 87222. Let's go back to the House of Commons then. You can listen on Times Radio. Watch along on the YouTube channel. Post your comments on the thing. We'll go back. It's question number 3 from Angela Rayner.
Deputy Leader.
Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is, after 13 years of Tory rule, they're still lurching from crisis to crisis and wallowing in their own mess. They can't solve the crisis because they are the crisis. The honourable member opposite should take more note of what's happening at his conferences in his party before trying to make up what's happening in mine. The Prime Minister pledged that by March, NHS waiting lists would fall. It's now May. So can he tell us, since he made that pledge, is the number of people waiting on late waiting lists higher or lower?
Mr. Speaker, we are making good progress, for example, with 2-year waiting lists. But the Right Honourable Lady seems to forget a crucial fact. The United Kingdom experienced an unprecedented pandemic. Right before COVID, GP satisfaction was high. Delayed discharges were half. Ambulance targets were being met. And she knows that right now, in Labour-run Wales, exactly the same challenges are being faced. The difference between us is, on this side of the House, we've got a plan to fix it, while she's too busy playing petty politics.
Petty politics. Oh, that's the trouble with politicians. They're always playing politics.
They are. Well, not all of them, to be honest.
No, that's true.
Only the good ones.
Only the good ones. We have now got onto some substance, and it is the case that I think waiting lists are at record high by the most recent figures.
It seems very likely that we're about to be told that, yes.
Yeah.
But an OK response from Dowden. I mean, he's not got much to play with. We're making progress on the 2-year waiting lists. Well, great. What about the shorter ones? But yeah, a classic trope as well. Labour-run Wales, and it's a fair enough point.
Yeah,
things aren't much better there, and that's always given the Tories a minor. Well, it's a twig with which to beat the Labour Party.
So the number of people waiting for hospital treatment in England has hit a record high. This was last week. At the end of March, 7.3 million patients had yet to start treatment. Of those, 360,000 had waited more than a year, and 10,700 waited more than 18 months. A delay that the Health Service said last year would aim to eradicate by April. So we're going to get rid of the 18-month ones, and there's still 10,000 waiting. So that's the figures. I suspect I might have just preempted what Angela Rayner was going to say. So let's hear Angela Rayner read out those numbers.
Mr. Speaker, even before the pandemic, waiting lists were going up. So it doesn't wash that this government, after 13 years in power, is blaming everybody but themselves for what people are having to put up with. He appears to be claiming that 11,000 patients waiting more than 18 months is an achievement. The last Labour government reduced waiting times from 18 months to 18 weeks, and he can come back to me when he's achieved that. The fact is, Mr Speaker, waiting lists are longer than when the Prime Minister made his pledge 5 months ago. The number of people in England waiting to start hospital treatment is the highest since records began. 7.3 million patients left waiting. Now, I know the Prime Minister has his own private GP, so maybe he doesn't appreciate the urgency. But he's left people like my constituent Carol waiting for over a year for an urgent appointment, moved from waiting list to waiting list with appointments cancelled again and again. So if not now, when will waiting lists fall?
Order. It'll continue till I hear the end of this question. If I get any more interruptions, it will take longer. Angela Ray.
Mr Speaker, they don't want to hear the question because they know the answer. They know the answer is that they failed the British people. So when will waiting lists fall?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I would gently say to the Right Honourable Lady, if she cares that much about access to our healthcare, why is she opposing our minimum service levels? They will provide core emergency services with vital cover during healthcare strikes. Does she not think that vulnerable patients deserve that level of care, or is she too weak to stand up to her union paymasters?
Definitely a bell for union paymasters. Yeah. Strikes, minimum standards.
Minimum service levels. Yeah. These are all classics of the genre, aren't they?
Interesting.
But again, you know, with the waiting lists, I mean, I feel like we were on a waiting list waiting for the blooming question. I mean,
bit long.
Rayner's normally a bit sort of
pithy.
Yeah, not today.
There's also the risk in the art of PMQs. If you do a very long, rambling question, your opponent has time to think about what they're going to say. But you also just give them a whole load of things to hitch onto.
And they can just latch onto whichever one they want.
Or just ignore it entirely.
Yeah.
I think it's also probably the case there that she did ask a question at the end and then Lindsay Hoyle interrupted, so she had to ask it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
He said we want to hear the question at precisely the moment we had just heard it.
Yeah.
But there we go.
There we are. There's probably not much more to say about it. I mean, buried in the depths of all that, Rishi Sunak's got a private GP, union paymasters, all the greatest hits. Anyway, let's go back. Question number 5 from Angela Rayner.
Mr Speaker, we all want minimum service levels. It's this government that have failed to provide minimum service levels in all of our trains, in all of our public services, because they've run them down and mismanaged them for the last 13 years. Now, it's not just waiting times, Mr Speaker. 13 years after the Landmark Marmot review into child poverty, Sir Michael says this government is on track to make child poverty worse, with more than a quarter of our children living in poverty last year. When I was a young mum, I remember the sick feeling in my stomach not knowing if my wages would cover the bills. Yet his government has taken a wrecking ball to measures by the last Labour government to eradicate child poverty, even abolishing the child poverty unit. They tried to justify this by saying they no longer needed a child poverty unit because they've abolished the child poverty targets. So can he tell us what level of poverty he considers to be a success?
I'd say to the Right Honourable Lady, this comprehensive schoolboy is not going to take any lectures from the party opposite about the lives of working people. What I would say is that we have introduced record increases in the national living wage, something that this party introduced, the party opposite failed to do so. And we have taken 1 million working-age people out of poverty altogether. That is the record of my party, and one of which I am very proud.
Oh, he's a comprehensive schoolboy.
Well, this is the thing. Even David Cameron assumed that Oliver Dowden was very posh and had gone to public school. But Dowden is actually, he's a comp boy, and he's
he
sort
went
of
to a Parliamentary school, a partially selective state comprehensive in Watford.
Yeah, and the boy sort of dragged himself from there, but has adopted some of the modes of speech and accent of some people who didn't go to those schools.
It's apparently currently the most oversubscribed school in Hertfordshire.
Oh, well, there we go. It was privileged education after all.
And then he went to Trinity Hall, Cambridge, where he read law, and then joined the. Then he became a special advisor.
Well, it's slightly refreshing, isn't it, to have someone who didn't read PPE at Oxford in the cabinet?
Yeah, but you're bringing law. Also, he went to Cambridge, where almost all prime ministers go to Oxford, apart from Liz Truss.
Yes, there was I think Cambridge's last one was Baldwin.
Yeah.
Though we do have Pitt the Younger.
We've always got Pitt the Younger. I mean, the trouble is trying to play the class card against Angela Rayner, who left school with basically no GCSEs, having just had a baby and got a job and worked her way up from there. Of all the people to play the class card with.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a defensive device and it was fine. And actually, he had some substance there as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Rayner particularly won that one.
No, it's interesting. This maybe Oliver Dowden's getting the better of her, which is not what lots of people thought when they were messaging in the beginning.
Well, she's not helping herself with these sort of long, rambling questions, I would say. As you said, pointed out, she's far more likely to catch him out if she just asks him a straight question about something difficult.
I'd like to make an apology to Liz Truss. She went to Oxford. I thought she went to Cambridge.
No, she went to Oxford. Don't blame that on Cambridge.
Somebody went to Cambridge. Was it Quasi? Did Quasi go to Cambridge?
Quasi was at Cambridge.
There we are.
Yeah.
Phil in Devon says, currently listening to two easily pleased Tories on Times Radio.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, we just say...
I was accused of violent bias against the government on Twitter last week. So.
Yeah, it's easily done. I mean, we are easily pleased, given the barrier of the bar that needs to be cleared.
I mean, I want some intelligent political points. I want a bit of oomph.
Yeah.
I'm not averse to a good joke that tells a political point.
And then...
we're doing all right on both sides.
And then we want a peroration.
And then a proper peroration.
So come on, here we go then. Question number 6. We go live back to the House of Commons. Perorations all round. It's Angela Rayner first.
Mr. Speaker, the last Labour government made it their mission to reduce the number of children in poverty by 1 million. We achieved that. Under the Tories, child poverty is nearly back to the level it was when Labour last inherited the Tory mess. After 13 years of the Tories, they're stuck in a conveyor belt of crisis. And while his party is preparing for opposition with their Trump Tribute Act conference over the road, Labour are focused on fixing the real problems facing British people. The Tories have picked their side. They're for the vested interests, for the oil companies and the bankers, for those that are profiting from the crisis and not suffering from it. Whether it's failing the millions of people anxiously waiting for treatment or overseeing a rise in child poverty. And while his colleagues spout nonsense at their carnival of conspiracy, I want to know, when will his party stop blaming everybody else and realise that the problem is them?
Mr. Speaker, I will proudly defend our record in office. Crime down 50%, near record levels of employment, a record minimum wage. And what, Mr. Speaker, what's their record? 4 general election defeats, 30 promises already broken, and 1 leader who let anti-Semitism run wild. That is why the British people will never trust the Labour Party.
That was a bit more like it. Conveyor belt of crisis. Now, I can see that on an election poster.
Yes, and it's one of those things, if she'd spent the whole session kind of giving us examples, that would be a very good kind of way of tying it all together. I mean, she had some good lines about the conference over the road, which I may go and have a look at later. The Carnival of Conspiracy and the Trump Tribute Act.
Yeah, this is the National Conservatism Conference where they've all been getting the Ouija boards out to think what Edward Burke and Margaret Thatcher think.
Slightly curious sort of round off from, when you're attacking another leader, you need to sort of play into how they're seen. 4 general election defeats, fine, Labour's managed that. 30 principles broken, OK, well, if they're going to start making an issue of that, that's a good way of crystallising this whole thing about Starmer, and I'm sure we'll get a dossier at some point saying what the 30 broken principles are. But I do think sort of saying, here we are, being Tory again, defending Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
But, you know, of all the things Keir Starmer did, you can criticise him for not doing anything about anti-Semitism when he wasn't leader, but as soon as he was, he did.
Yeah.
You know, people in the Jewish community will have a view of Keir Starmer and how he behaved throughout that whole period. But I think to make that your main sort of sign-off, I'm not sure that quite does the business with the rest of the general public.
One of the fact-checking issue, because this has come up before, Oliver Dowden made the claim that crime is down 50%, halved since 2010. This is based on data from the crime survey for England and Wales, which doesn't include fraud or computer misuse. So it's not all crime, they're just the crimes.
No, it seems to exclude quite a lot of the crime that a lot of people are experiencing.
In 2022, so last year, fraud and computer misuse accounted for 4.4 million out of the 9 million total offences. So they've taken out half of the offences from last year in order to show that crime has fallen by half. So it's certainly a debating point.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the debates about crime traditionally are about people breaking into your home or stealing your car or menacing other human beings. Quite a lot of it is now people just, in ever more imaginative ways, trying to steal money from you.
Yeah, and if they're doing that online, it's not counted when they say that crime's down by half. Damn, somebody said, somebody's just texted in saying, retuned away from your tired, hungover chuckles and missed Deputy PMQs. Might have to catch it again elsewhere. Well, you can download it on the podcast later. And just for legal reasons, I'd like to point out, are you hungover?
I'm definitely not hungover.
Nor am I. So there we are.
No.
Get your facts right. Put your name on the text so I can abuse you properly. In a moment, Lara Spirit will be here. She's been watching the best of the rest so that you don't have to. Seeing how Oliver Dowden has been getting on. Did any Tory backbenchers cause them any trouble? She'll be here for that in just a moment. I think the journalist Andy McSmith's going to pop in as well. He's going to talk about his book. He's been in Westminster even longer than Tim Shipman. Probably,
considerably
possibly longer than you and I put together.
Not sure he hasn't been here longer than I've been on this earth, but anyway, that's
Yeah, you could well be right. Anyway, he's going to pop in and we'll do the quiz as well. If you want to come on and play the quiz, email me, matt@times.radio, matt@times.radio, we'll get you on and do the quiz. Now then, let's get a news update from Jamie Lieber.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
Thanks, Matt. Good afternoon. So just bear with me 1 second. Sorry, I'm having a technical issue. Scientists say it is more likely than not global warming will soon breach a key limit set by the Paris climate deal. Researchers estimate there is a 66% likelihood an average temperature rise, which is at least 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, will be recorded over the next 5 years. There's also a 98% chance of the hottest year on record being registered during that time too. Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden and Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner have clashed over NHS waiting lists at Prime Minister's Questions, which is obviously ongoing at the moment. We'll bring you more on the fallout from that throughout the afternoon. The Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police has denied being under political pressure when it came to policing the coronation. Matt Twist has told MPs he's proud of the way his officers policed the event.
The coronation of His Majesty King Charles and Queen Camilla was a historic moment of huge national significance, and we're proud to have successfully ensured it was delivered safely and in a secure way, despite the most challenging, fast-moving and complex policing picture we've ever encountered for a national celebration.
Scotland Yard has been criticised for being too heavy-handed with protesters, with the Met later saying it regretted some of the arrests made. Matt Twist has also denied the force was placed under political pressure, saying the operation was completely independent. A leading homelessness charity has told Times Radio an end to so-called no-fault evictions is very big news for renters in England. The government is tabling its renters reform bill today to allow tenants to challenge poor landlords without losing their home. And Sir Keir Starmer has told Times Radio his plans to allow more homes on the Greenbelt would bring house prices down. The Labour leader's promising to relax planning restrictions so more homes can be built, reducing demand. But a government minister's accused him of flip-flopping because the party's promised to protect greenfields before. To the weather now, dry and bright generally this afternoon with plenty of sunny spells. There's the chance of an odd isolated shower in central and southern England and a bit of rain in Scotland is expected later on too, but generally feeling warm where there is sunshine. And with a look at the sport now, here's Toby Gillis.
The latest twist in the saga of the potential takeover of Manchester United by British billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe has seen his Qatari rival come in with an improved 11th hour bid. The Times understands Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani's latest offer still falls short of both the £6 billion valuation the current owners have for the club and the offer made by Ratcliffe. The difference is that the Qatari bid is for the whole club. Ratcliffe's is just for a controlling stake, though he'd be expected to take over 100% of it in the coming 2 to 4 years. That's significant because 2 of the 6 siblings who currently own the club, Joel and Avram Glazer, are thought to be keen to keep a stake. The Times chief sports correspondent Matt Lawton has a hunch the new Qatari bid still won't be enough.
All the indications yesterday are that they haven't blown Ratcliffe out of the water with an offer that eclipses his. It is different, it is more upfront, but if there is a commitment within the deal that over the next 2 or 4 years, Ratcliffe will end up buying the whole thing, and actually it'll be nearer £6 billion, well, why wouldn't you sign up to that deal?
Well, one of the concerns of the Qatari bid is that it might be used for so-called sports washing, using their association with sporting success to clean their image in the eyes of those who accuse them of human rights abuses. And today another type of sports washing is in the headlines: environmental sports washing. Campaigners say the likes of BMW, who became the sustainability partner of the record football European champions Real Madrid, and Toyota, who are providing what's called sustainable mobility solutions for cycling's Giro d'Italia, are using these deals to improve their image, even as they lobby governments to delay climate policy. The New Weather Institute and the Badvertising campaign say sports should rethink their relationship with polluting businesses like these, as they once did with tobacco firms. And smart ball technology will be used to help rugby union referees for the first time during the Under-20 World Championships next month. A microchip in the ball is tracked in real time, meaning officials can tell if it's been passed forward, touched in flight, or is over the try line. You can read more on these stories on the Times website or app.
This is Times Radio.
At Villa Plus, we've been matching people to their perfect villa holiday for over 30 years. So whether you want a villa for a family reunion, plus plenty of smiles, or a child-friendly villa, plus a place to escape, we're here to help with exclusive, hand-picked villas, plus friendly in-resort teams. Book your perfect summer holiday now at villaplus.com. Villa Plus, it all adds up to amazing.
Alexis French here to introduce you to Apple Music Classical, the new app featuring over 5 million classical music tracks. Apple Music Classical elevates your listening experience like never before. Experience high-res, lossless audio and thousands of recordings in spatial audio. Easily search by work, composer, conductor, and more. Apple Music Classical is included with select Apple Music plans. Find it on the App Store.
Get a first look at tomorrow morning's front pages. Tonight from 10 with Carol Walker on Times Radio. This is Times Radio.
Very good afternoon to you. It's Matt Chorley on Times Radio. We've done Deputy PMQs Unpacked. Oliver Dowden is standing in for Rishi Sunak because right about now, but he seems to be refuelling in Kazakhstan, apparently on his way to Japan. So he's standing in for Rishi Sunak. We've done Angela Rayner. But what about the best of the rest? Lara Spirit, Times Red Box reporter, has been watching. Overall, how's he done?
He's done well, I think. One person who certainly thinks he's done well is Matt Hancock, who we'll listen to first. But generally, his colleagues seemed very
Don't
keen
frighten
to
the listeners off.
What, with Matt Hancock?
Yeah, don't trail ahead to Matt Hancock.
Has Matt Hancock been a lickspittle and a bottom kisser?
So gross.
Vote now on the
That's never happened
YouTube
before.
channel.
Has
What
it?
do you think is going to happen? Is Matt Hancock going to be a massive suck up, or is he going to really stick the boot in?
Stick it to him.
What do you think's going to happen, Laura? Well, you know.
Well, it's interesting because he sort of does both. He says, you'll hear in this him preparing for his life after Parliament and attempt to distance himself from some of the more wacky colleagues that he now seems to think that he has. But he starts by...
Because he's a serious statesman who went...
Such a serious statesman.
Kangaroo balls.
He starts by giving very warm congratulations to Oliver Dowden for his performance today, and then goes on to slightly disavow some of his more right-wing colleagues. So take a listen to this.
And can I congratulate my right honourable friend on a brilliant first performance at Prime Minister's Question. Will he keep the government laser-focused on the issues that matter to people like the cost of living in the NHS, and on the issues of the future, like artificial intelligence, which needs regulatory attention, and ignore the reactionary voices, no matter where they come from?
Well, my right honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight this. I'm incredibly optimistic about the future of this country in industries across the piece, including digital or indeed film and television in my own constituency. We're genuinely world-leading, creating high-quality jobs that we want our children or grandchildren to have.
There we are. Really sticking the boot in.
Yeah. I mean, you would have thought if he was going to have a pop at the, the National Conservatism gathering, that he would have actually done so instead of just sort of alluding to it. So well done. You're so brilliant.
Well
and
done,
here's a
Matt.
rude comment, but don't have the what's-its to actually be rude about people.
Do it properly. Yeah. Thank you, Lara. That was really good. Have you got any others as good as
He'll
that?
do really well as a TV presenter.
Are you being sarcastic? You don't like that I pick Matt Hancock?
No, I think it's a great one to pick because we should always hear Matt Hancock's just
while we
made
still
for
can.
broadcasting.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Can join PMQs. It's so important. And just to be clear, I'm never sarcastic.
Okay.
Have you got anyone else?
I have. I've got another Tory MP, Desmond Swain.
We really are rounding up the cracks. Go on.
Sorry, this is a question that's not that interesting for the question because it's about a policy on EU nationals that Keir Starmer has already said that he won't focus on in today's Times. But the answer comes with, I think, one of the lines that Oliver Dowden will have been excitedly rehearsing with aides this morning and will have been keen to deliver. So take a listen to this.
Very good.
What would be a reason for extending the general election franchise to settled EU citizens, a population of voters equal to the number in Wales?
Well, I think my honourable friend is referring to the plans from the party opposite. And it's actually quite interesting that this week, while we're pushing ahead with legislation to break the smuggling gangs, what's Labour's big idea? Give foreign nationals a say in our elections. So there we have it. While the Conservatives will stop the boats, Labour will rig the votes.
Oh, dear.
It's an awful slogan, isn't it?
While Conservatives stop the boats, which they're not, Labour will rig the votes, which they're not.
They're also not.
Because he's ruled that out. In the interview in the Times today, he rows back on it, doesn't he, and says that
it's not a priority.
It's not a priority. It's not. They've got no plans for electoral reform,
which is euphemistic
electoral
for
change.
We won't do it, just like abolishing the House of Lords.
This isn't policy. We will debate a number of things, but I know because of the damage the damaged country will inherit are to be laser focused in government on the missions I've said we will deliver. We've got 5 missions. None of them involve electoral change.
Can I inject a note of scepticism as a long-standing political hack who's listened to a lot of answers like that?
Go on, then.
That's not ruling it out.
No.
It's saying, of course, we'll try and fix the economy and all the other mess first. But if you want a second
Then
term...
we'll rig the election.
Well, and also don't say, no plans is always a formula for we'll only do it if we have to. And one of the scenarios in which they might have to do it is if they were going into coalition with the Liberal Democrats. So I think a little more cynicism...
I've told you, I don't do sarcasm and I don't do cynicism.
This story only came about because the Labour Party floated it in their friendly newspaper at the weekend.
Yeah, the FT.
So to then turn around and say, "Oh, we're not doing it," they were testing the waters a bit, I would suggest.
Yes, and they've now rowed back on.
They have rowed back, but they haven't ruled it out entirely.
Yeah. Also,
so I
of course,
think we should be clear about that.
Starmer's early proposals when he was running for the leadership.
Well, yes, because that was the thing that was so exciting. It was one of the only things that survived his leadership contest. And now he's way back on that as well. Right, any more?
We've got a final one. We've got Simon Clarke, of course, former...
what a platter of Tory treats you've bought us.
Sorry.
No, it was fine. It's good.
I mean, this is interesting because obviously, in Downing Street there are jokes about is there anything we can find that Simon Clarke will agree with us on? Because, of course, he is one of the kind of loudest rebels on the backbenches.
And tallest.
And tallest, yeah. And he was the youngest and tallest of Boris Johnson's cabinet.
And big Trussite.
Big trust site, but and also very importantly, big ally of Ben Houchen, of course, Mayor of Tees Valley. This is a question following reports recently and comments from Labour about the Tees Work project, the Freeport investment. He stands up and take a listen to what he says, and also to Oliver Dowden doing his very best, I think, to kind of warmly receive his question and to criticise Labour.
Lovely, let's take a listen.
Mr. Speaker, incredible regeneration work is taking place on Teesside, led by our Mayor, Ben Houchen. Sadly, we have seen a shameful attempt to smear the amazing Tees Works project, led by the Honourable Member for Middlesbrough, who I've given advance notice to. Will he confirm that it was always an integral part of the business case that the private sector should co-invest alongside government, and that the Tees Works arrangements themselves have been checked and approved by the government? And will he reconfirm his full support for the Tees Works projects, reassure investors, and join me in calling for the Labour Party to apologise for talking down Teesside?
Well, my right honourable friend is absolutely correct to raise this issue. It is the UK's first free port, and it continues to attract billions of pounds of private sector investment, creating jobs and supporting the local economy. And I think the whole House will see through the inexcusable attempts by the Labour Party to talk down those successes on Teesside, where local leaders are working tirelessly to improve that region for the first time in a generation.
So just the background to this Tees Works issue, it's been reported that potentially millions of pounds worth of land at the former steelworks site in Redcar were handed to private investors for only £100. Allegations of industrial scale corruption. Ben Houchen, the mayor, as we heard there, has insisted he wants to nip it in the bud once and for all, and says he would support a full investigation being carried out.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. Ben Houchen and Simon Clarke have been a kind of pair on a number of these issues recently, also on the crustacean die-off that we've seen. That's been another very controversial one where the opposition to that is ongoing. I think what Simon Clarke wanted in that question was very much to tie his hands with that of the government. Actually, he's wanted the government, I would imagine, to be more vocal in support for that project and specifically for Ben Houchen. So pretty unsurprising in some respects that we got that, but I think, it was definitely very fervent support that we heard from him there.
And this is, it's one of those areas where if you're trying to tell a good story about Tories outside of London, this is an area where they have clung on to the mayoralty. They've done some stuff, they've built a load of things, they've moved bits of government up there, and if you look at the local election results, it's one of the few bright spots for the Conservative Party. They were gaining seats in Redcar and places like that, and the Tees Valley generally was pretty good for them. That's why it's become a very toxic political issue up there, with Labour trying to regain a lot of those seats.
Well, there we are. That brings us to the end of PMQs Unpacked. Lara, what time will people be?
3 p.m.
3 p.m. On the nose.
On the nose, on the dot.
On the dots. Lara will bring you the Times Red Box PMQs Unpacked email, rounding up everything you need to know, including the view from the gallery from Quentin Letts.
Yes.
It's always good because you can spot things that we can't.
Exactly.
On the telly. Lovely to see you, Lara. Lovely to see you, Tim. What, are you off to the conference now? Are you speaking?
I'm not speaking, no, I'm going to observe.
Look forward to you reporting
Lee
back
Anderson
on that.
is up later.
Oh, very good. Look forward to you reporting back. Very good. This is Matt Chorley on Times Radio. Up next, we'll do the quiz, and Andy McSmith is going to join us to talk about his extraordinary time as a long-standing lobby journalist. We think even longer than Tim Shipman and I put together. We'll do that next on Times Radio.
Mariella Frostrup on Times Radio.
The French Film Festival is underway. I'll be talking to Graydon Carter, whose return to the festival means glamour is back on the Croisette. We'll also be on the ground in France for another excursion where a lavish exhibition is exploring Charlie Chaplin's Gypsy